What is up Saturday night? It is finally the end of the first week of spooky season series here on Reaper's Underground. And for all y'all out there in Black Flame Land that are starting to tune in, this is the time that you need to share this anywhere and everywhere. If you know anyone that is a fan of movies such as 13 Ghosts, Trick or Treat, or even Scooby-Doo Part 2, this is definitely the time to chat with this extraordinary actor who has been in some of the most legendary films of the last 25 years. So get to sharing. You know what to do. Otherwise, I'm coming for you. All right. Real quick, we're going to take a quick commercial break to our brothers over at Villain Arts Tattoos. Check that shit out. That's right. Villain Arts Tattoos, the largest tattoo convention in the United States, in the world. Check them out when they come to a city near you or your city. All right. Just to shameless plug, it's out. The latest Morgrot magazine issue number 7, the Reaper edition, is out. And if you missed your pre-order chance of getting one of these babies, 57 pages of awesomeness, you have a chance. Go over to morgrot.com and check out my boy John Sorrell, and he's got a few extra copies. So get over there and get them while you can. All right, let us welcome to the first time ever on the Underground, extraordinary, legendary actor, C. Ernst Harth. How are you tonight, brother?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. This looks like it's going to be some fun.
Definitely a different experience. How's it going, Kyler? He says hello to everyone. So, shoot, where do we begin? We're talking about you have been in so many super popular films, television, that most people just, they wouldn't know it. But you've managed to be in some amazing things. So how did you actually get started doing acting?
Well, it's there's the two phases. You got the in school, the doing the assemblies and the improv and what have you, and that all started because when I went to school, the first school I went to in kindergarten, I didn't know, but this school had a Christmas pageant every year, and that one of their little traditions was, and I don't know how PC this would be nowadays, but one of the traditions they had was the biggest kid in the school would play Santa Claus in this in this Christmas pageant. And I just happened to be the biggest kid in school, and I was in kindergarten. So you have this pageant that's put on by the grade fours and the grade fives. And then Santa Claus, who comes out at the end, is this little 5 year old. I was already the biggest kid in the school. So that that basically got me started with acting, and it was just like loving the attention because the Christmas pageant, who's it all about? It's about Santa Claus at the end coming out with the bag of presents. So I loved having that attention, and it just took off from there. I did all the school assemblies. I got into public speaking. I started going to old age homes and what have you with a friend of mine, and we would do like little improv games and basically like whose line is it anyway. We would do little things for just to get the seniors up and active because nobody was visiting them and what have you. So we would go and
Mhm.
give them an hour or 2 hours in an afternoon, have some fun, and it was. But the way I looked at it was a way to get attention and a way to get out of class. You know,
Well,
my
who the
my
hell wouldn't want to do
my
that?
my poor bleeding heart was third, I think. It was like the seniors came third in my list. It was getting out of class and getting attention first. And so that continued on all through school with different school plays. I did the Miracle Worker. I did that in high school, and then I moved. This was in Ontario, Canada, and one afternoon, a friend and I are sitting and we're having coffee at a donut place, and he says, "What do you want to do today?" And I said, "I don't know. What do you want to do?" And he says, "Let's go to Vancouver." And I thought, okay. So we were both on student welfare. I had been kicked out of my house, and I was living on my own as a student, and
Mm.
so I was free to just jump on a bus and go. So 4 days later. Which let me tell you, 4 days on a Greyhound, you get to know a lot of people by smell.
Oh man, I can only imagine.
Because as,
This is
as
bad
you
on a
go from
plane
as you
too.
go from province to province and city to city, about 80% of the bus gets off, but there's that 20% that continues on the journey across the country. And so by the time we got here 4 days later, it was like a little mini party. We were like rolling beers and liquor bottles down the aisle, and so playing strip poker. That's what
That's killer.
when I got here. I got to Vancouver. I was 19, and I got a job working in a bar because when you're my size, when you're 6'6", 400 pounds, you walk into a bar, that's your resume. You need a doorman. I'm a doorman. Here you go. And as a doorman at a club, and one night these two ladies approached me and they said, "Are you in the film industry?" And I was like, "What?" I'm a boxer here. I don't know what you're talking about. They go, "Well, you have an interesting face. I think we could do something with your face." And I thought, whatever. They gave me their card. I looked at it and they walked away. And I thought, bunch of chicks just trying to pick me up. Whatever. Put the card in my pocket, got home, threw the card on my desk. A couple weeks later, I'm cleaning up my desktop and I come across their card and I thought, whatever. I didn't even
Who the
really
hell
look at the
not?
card. So I never really even looked at the card. So it was like 2 weeks later is when I realized that they were talent agents. And
Oh
so I
shit!
called them. Yeah. So I called them out of the blue. And within a week, I was shooting my first commercial. And it was
Damn.
for a BC chicken growers. It was for the Chicken Growers Association. And it was all the farmers. And I was basically the star of this commercial. And I'm a prisoner eating. You can find it on YouTube. It's
Oh
BC Chicken
shit!
Growers. It's on my YouTube
Everybody out
page.
there in Black Flame Land's gonna look that up like right now.
Yeah, it's this cop wants her chicken so bad that on the way from taking this criminal to prison, she stops off to get chicken. So I'm sitting at the lunch counter with her in my handcuffs while she's eating the chicken. And finally, she's talking to the camera, and the whole time she's waving this chicken drumstick around, and I can't stand it anymore. And I just lunge forward and rip the chicken out of her hand with my mouth. And then she yells, "Freeze!" I drop the chicken, and that's the whole commercial. But I had shot that February 27th, 1990, and I had just turned 20 2 weeks earlier. And that was the first thing I shot. And I thought I was a movie star because I was the star of this thing. And I was on bus shelters and I was on the side of buses. And I thought, man, this
Wow.
is the easiest
That's the
business to
life
get
right
into.
there.
And
You got
then
you got
the
fucking publicity that you can't pay for. It's right
and
there.
then the next three things I did, I was a non-union extra, and I quickly realized that it's not like that first gig. all, all of a sudden, I'm working on a show that was on CBS in 1990 called Broken Badges, and
Right.
uh, I'm I took the cab to get to where I had to shoot because all these films they shoot so early before the bus system and everything is up and running. So it turned out I ended up making 12 I ended up spending $12 more on the cab to get there than I made that day.
Oh, no.
And then one of the other extras and thankfully drove me home back downtown from where we were shooting. But that was when I realized then and there I got to be in front of the camera. I can't be in the background. It's got to be me. I love that first experience.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I just pursued it. And then in 96, so that's how I got into the film industry and in 1990. And then in 1996, I had done stuff on the side. Like I was still working full-time jobs, but I was doing part-time acting gigs here and I had an
Sure.
agent and I was doing things, starting to accumulate a resume. And then in 1996, a friend of mine called me, says, "You know that little short film you did there was like it was like a fan film. This was in
Oh,
1994. I
sure.
had done a fan film for Alien. It was called
Ooh.
Alien IV question mark, and this was before there was an Alien 4. And it was like, what if there was a sequel to Alien, what would it be like? And so these filmmakers made this film and they put me in it. And somehow this director had seen this little fan film in 1994 before the internet. So it was like, I don't know how he saw. I think a friend of his was in it. And my friend calls me and says, he's written a feature film and he's based the lead around you and he wants to shoot it. Do you want to do it?
Oh, fuck yeah.
It was someone I don't know wrote a film for me and they want me in it. So at that time, I was working as an office manager and I knew that I wasn't going to get 2 weeks off work. So I
Right.
had
That
to make a decision. It was like, okay, am I going to be a full time actor or am I going to continue working here as an office manager? When someone writes a movie for you, it's like
I mean, what?
the
Yeah.
universe is sort of telling you what to do. So I
Hmm.
said, okay, universe, if you want me to be an actor, then I'm putting it in your hands. And I quit that job and I went and did that movie. And that's the movie that we shot. We finally finished it in 2017. It had a long gestation period. It sat on the shelf for 14 years because we basically ran out of money in the 90s because that was back when it was going to be $40,000 to do a 35 millimeter blow up. Everything was analog, so it was like
Yeah.
it wasn't it like it is nowadays. It was expensive to make movies back when you had to make movies. Actually,
Oh,
with a flatbed
absolutely.
editing system and everything. So then when we saw a documentary about digital film and how it was coming into its own, and my which it's funny, that's how I got hired on the film. And then over the course of these years, I ended up becoming one of the producers and then becoming producing partner with the director. And we've done a couple other films since. But it was when we realized that we could take all the 16 millimeter footage and get it scanned into a computer. And then all of a sudden we could do whatever we wanted with it. And that's how we finally got the finished film. And he ended up doing his own animation in the film. It's called Joe Finds Grace. And we're trying to get a distributor for it. But it nowadays, if we had finished the film in 97, it would have been much easier to get the film distributed because it
Oh,
was
yeah.
that much harder to make a film. Now, like even when we were submitting our last film to film festivals, they said they used to get 300 films. Now they get 8,000 films.
It's like how do you weed through all that? That's ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and then what ends up happening is they end up watching like the first 2 minutes of every movie, and it's like,
Yeah, they're
stupid.
like,
Next one.
this sucks. This doesn't look good.
It could just have a bad first 5 minutes, but you know, if that's what doesn't get you seen, and that's what we ran into. It was like, at some point you're like, I'm just bleeding entry fees. So yeah, so that's
Absolutely.
how I got in. That's how I got into acting. That's how I became a full time. And since '96, I've been a. That's all I am as an actor. So it's
And,
it's been a crazy business.
very, yeah, very humble beginnings. Just to mention a few that you've done, especially in the 90s there, Dudley Do Right, um, Crash, um, let's see here. And these were feature films, people. That went to the silver screen. You know what I'm saying? So, and
Well,
you
yeah, Dudley
landed
Do
up
Right.
in a
With that,
movie.
Dudley Do Right was Brendan Fraser and Alfred
Yeah.
Molina and Sarah Jessica Parker, and the list just kept going. Alex Rocco, um, Eric Idle.
Hmm.
And that was my first like supporting role in a big Hollywood film, and that worked out great. I went into an audition for 4 lines, 1 day's work, and Hugh Wilson, the director, was also the writer and the executive producer, so he had a lot of pull on this thing. And I hit it off with him in the directing room in the audition, and he said to me, "Leave it with me." And next thing I know, he's turned this four line character into one of the main henchmen of Snidely Whiplash. So next thing you know, I'm working for the next 3 months instead of 1 day's work. And then on my last day when we wrapped, I said, "How come I'm not in the big dance number next week? Doesn't make sense that my character Shane wouldn't be there with the rest of the bad guys." And Hugh looks at me and he goes, "Can you dance?" So I did a little jig on the spot. And once again, he says, "Leave it with me." So the next morning, I get a phone call that says, "Hi, Teamster will be there in an hour to pick you up for dance rehearsal." And I was like, What? So off to dance rehearsal for 2 days. And because they'd already worked out most of the big dance number, they basically
Oh,
tagged me onto the end. So now the dance number ends with them throwing Sarah Jessica Parker into my hands, and I throw her up on my shoulder and do the big ta-da. So it's like, once again, I scored myself the
oh,
perfect situation by insisting that I continue to stay on this movie. And people
not a
always
lot
say,
of
"How do you?"
not a lot of actors can say they got to grab Sarah Jessica Parker and throw her over their shoulder.
Well,
Um,
after a few rehearsals during the weekend when we were doing the rehearsals, she said to me, "Ernst, I hope I'm not too heavy." And I,
she's like a
I,
stick.
I said, "Honey, I've had hairstyles that have weighed more."
I love it. Holy
She was
crap balls!
tiny. So yeah, that
Just
was a
the
that was a
tiniest lady.
so that was a great shoot. And then I, ended up getting a couple more days after that. So it ended up being my first big, supporting role. And then
Yeah,
I was surprised when I had 1 day's work, which turned into a few days' work on X-Files, the
right.
big famous black and white episode, the postmodern Prometheus, where they have like the elephant man creature who's got like he's got two heads, and the whole thing is shot in black and white. There you go. Yeah, that's me. That the barn's on fire, and that was another one that I didn't realize when I got the role, because I have the character name of Huge Man, so they wanted a bunch of town folk to look like the different farm animals, and I guess I was the pig or something. I don't know. The cow, I guess.
Why
So
is
I
it
was Huge Man.
whenever directors, want certain animals, they always go for us big guys?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it gets us in there.
Well, they had one guy was supposed to be like a horse, and he had like a big long mane, like a big ponytail. And they had one girl supposed to be like a chicken, so she was always doing this kind of thing. And so they had all these different characters, these weird characters. But what they didn't tell me was is that they ended up giving me an upfront guest star credit. So I'm at
Oh,
home with my little VCR recording X Files just to see my couple scenes. And at the beginning of the film, it says guest starring, and it shows all the guest star names, and then it says and see Ernst Harth. And I completely lost my mind. I think I almost pressed stop on the record on the VCR because I jumped out of my chair. I was like, "What the hell?"
I mean, I would have soiled myself at that point. Uh,
And the greatest part is you have in the scene you have David Duchovny and you have Gillian Anderson, and they're in
right.
their car as Mulder and Scully driving to the scene of the episode, and she's reading a file, and she's reading this article and this letter that was written to this guy, and in the letter it says, I got your name off the TV. And just as Jillian reads that, boom, up comes my name on the screen. So in the late 90s, for the longest time, my demo reel started with Gillian Anderson saying, I got your name off the TV. So
Shit. And that makes it so easy for anybody to go back, especially if they're a fan of the show and find your name like that. And now they'll know exactly where to look. And it's like, oh,
I pop up everywhere.
oh man. And then it led you to a remake, actually, of a classic. And I must say, much better done. The cast all the way around is probably one of my most favorite horror films of the this was what two
2001?
2001, yeah. So
Yeah, because it came out like the Halloween after 9/11, so that didn't help.
nope, sure didn't, but it didn't stop it. It
No.
didn't stop it at all. It's become a cult classic. How did this one land in your lap?
Yeah, like a lot of the strange auditions I get because of my size. Like I said, at that when we shot that film, I'm still 6'6" and a bit, so 6'6" and a half. But at that point, I was 400 and no 598 pounds. I was 2 pounds away from 600. And everyone always say, "Oh, you
Woo!
carry it well." It's like the fact that you can get out of bed, you're carrying it well.
Well, thank
But
goodness that's all they said because
yeah.
how people can be.
Yeah, and that's where the height goes is a good thing to go with the weight
It
because
is.
like they see the width and they're about to say something and then they see the height and they're like, never mind.
You're like,
So
you're exactly what the fuck we wanted for this movie. So we're not going to say shit. We're going to kiss your ass.
yeah, that's why I'd go for auditions and they'd always say, "What's the C stand for?" And I'd look straight at them and I go, it stands for checks and credits, and as long as it's on those two, that's all you need to know.
That's
Unfortunately,
badass.
now with the internet, anybody can just in 2 seconds go, "Oh, it stands for carry."
You let the cat out of the bag, not me. Just
you
so you
can't
know.
you can't have your shtick anymore because everything is out there. And in the old days, you know, people only knew what you told them. You know,
Right.
yeah, that's why you could have
Absolutely.
in the old days you could have a much longer resume.
It's so fucking
Wow,
true.
I never heard of half of these films. Yeah, a lot of independence, a lot of,
Mm.
but
So here you are in
with
this
13
situation with,
Ghosts.
yeah, Tony Shalhoub and
Yeah. So I go into this audition. They say they're auditioning the ghosts in a movie called 13 Ghosts. And I thought, well, that's a pretty good role because, there's only going to be 13 ghosts. It's not like it's going to be full. If they put the number right there in the title, you're not going to be one of thousands of ghosts. So I thought that should be fun. So I go
Mhm.
there and they say, okay, we basically want you to stand on that mark, look at the camera, and just look scary. It's like, so I just stood there
So
and then
resting
they go,
bitch
okay.
face then?
So they had us do that, and then they had us walk towards camera, and then they wanted us to do like a zombie walk towards camera, then show us how you would walk the halls of this house and all that kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
they hadn't really determined the character, like they hadn't really nailed down the specifics of each ghost. They just knew they wanted a big guy, they wanted a little person, and then they were going to try and work it all out. Because originally, when I auditioned, I think my character was called Couch Potato, and the original concept drawing I saw of him was this big guy who died sitting on a couch. He basically ate himself to death, and he's got all these, you see his shirt moving, his skeleton, his body's moving, and all these rats are coming in and out of like his eye socket and his neck, and there's
Ooh.
rats coming in and out of him. So that was like their original concept. Then, and with each concept there was like another script. So I've got a stack of scripts in storage for like different versions of the movie. I got one version that was written by James Gunn. It's like,
Oh.
it's it's like, because a lot of these guys, they're like script doctors, they get hired to
Oh
come
yeah.
in and rewrite scripts, right? So I got about 10 different versions of different actors, people that had nothing to do with the final film, right?
Wow.
Wrote their version. So, and
Hmm.
another one was I was like a John of a dominatrix, and I had this dominatrix who was a dwarf who ended up becoming my mother, but she was like strapped to the side of me, and she was in a leather bondage outfit, and she basically died when I rolled over on her or some kind of
Oh
thing.
shit.
And when you see the Black Zodiac, in the film and you see the different not cartoons, but like illustrations of the different ghosts,
Hmm.
you'll notice the the great child and I think what is it, the dire mother. Uh, the drawing is still sort of based on that concept. So when you see the Black Zodiac, you'll see, yeah, there. That's how we look in the final film. But when you look at the Black Zodiac, there's still sort of a stylized version of her in like a leather outfit hanging off the side of me, because so much of this stuff has to happen during pre-production, like a lot of the
Yeah.
artwork and stuff. And a lot of times stuff is based on earlier versions, like
Hmm.
when you there was with Scooby, we'll get into it after, but when Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, they had a board game, and my character on the board game on the pawn was based on one of my makeup tests, not what I looked like in the movie. I was on a
No
Burger
kidding.
King toy that was based on another makeup test, but not what I looked like in the movie. With Dudley Do Right, for example, the film that we shot was an adult oriented, like a novelty trip. Like it was like a film for adults to go back and see something from their youth. But the studio, Universal, thought they were making a children's film, a kids'
Yeah.
film. So they made them reshoot like 40% of the movie, and they added back like the horse farting and the horse sticking out his tongue and all the slapstick, all the stuff that they thought kids would find funny, they
Uh-huh.
put back in the film, and they took out all the adult oriented stuff, because at one point Sarah Jessica Parker's father gets shipped to Florida where he ends up retiring and working at this gay club, and there's like all this adult humor in the film that ended up leaving the film. And then the problem was, in the end, nobody went and saw the film because the kids don't know what Dudley Do Right is. The people who knew what Dudley Do Right was wasn't going to go see some stupid dumbed down film. But why I bring this up is because they they do these novelizations of films, right?
Yeah.
So when you go to the kids section and you go to the bookstore and you go to the kids section, you'll find a Dudley Do Right novelization of the film for kids. But
Hmm.
the novelization is based on the early version of the script. So it's got the guy being sent to the gay club, and it's got all the adult stuff in it, but it's in a novelization based for kids. And I can imagine a kid who saw the movie gets this book that's based for him, and they're like, "What am I reading?" So it's always
Like,
funny when
whoops.
you know the behind the scenes stories of things that got left out or got put in at the last minute or changed or whatever. A lot of people, they'll say, I didn't like that film. And it's like, well, if you had only seen the film we shot, not the film
Right.
that was released. Like when I did the A Team, they ended up releasing the theatrical cut, and then they also had the director's extended edition. Well, the director's extended edition is what we like to call the film
Yeah,
that the
right.
director made
Like the way it was
and
supposed to
handed,
be.
yeah,
Yeah.
handed to the studio, and then the studio went, too much exposition, take it out, we just want the explosions. And then you go see the film and it's like,
Ah,
it's a big mess. Yeah. So then watch the extended edition, which is actually it's so crazy. So people then think the director made a crappy movie when in fact,
it's
no, the
not their
studio
fault.
released.
Yeah.
That's
Which,
the fun part is,
thank hell they actually, at least, release DVDs where you do get the movie the way it was supposed to be. That explains why some blockbusters just end up being all action and no dialogue.
yeah. And then when they release the director's version, it's an hour longer, but then all of a sudden you're like, wow, the film makes sense now. Like,
It's like, oh, okay, I got the explanation I was looking for.
yeah. So why didn't you just release the movie it was made in the first place? And why is because if we take out another at 45 minutes, we can sell one more screening per day, and that's all it's about. It's not about telling a story. It's about getting as many screenings per day. So that's
Right.
because they focus on the business, not on the show.
Which, a movie like 13 Ghosts, it has a hell of a story.
Yeah, and
It's got, funny moments. It's got obviously really scary moments as well. And real heartfelt, emotional stuff, like in the beginning of the film. But,
well,
as
that
the
opening,
family
I love
gets
that
in,
opening. The opening transitions from the everything's fine to the after the fire, all within the one shot as the camera's panning across that room. It's such an amazing scene.
it's powerful,
Yeah.
absolutely powerful.
And I like how they took the gimmick of the first movie where the audience wore glasses to see the ghosts and
Hmm.
put that into the movie so the characters in the movie have to wear the glasses. Because if you buy the DVD of the original movie,
Hmm.
uh, they it comes with a pair of 3D glasses, and you can watch the movie with the 3D glasses, and it's so stupid. It goes like really bad 60s animate with like image comes across the screen. It's a skeleton. Ah!
Oh, absolutely. Um, Let me see here. Kyler says, "Man, the amount of lore I read about 13 Ghosts, you played the character well." And he
Thank you.
says, Kyler also says, "I prefer the director versions of movies the way it was meant to be." So
Yeah.
that just goes to show you, everyone agrees. We want the whole thing. Don't give us a
And that
chopped up version of it. It's
and that's why
boring.
physical media needs to stick around. The problem is with so many of these streamers, it's like you get the version they put out and then that's usually it. There's no extras, there's no director's cut, there's no backstory, there's no commentary, there's no nothing. And the worst part is they can pull it at any point and then it doesn't exist.
Which is insane.
Or they don't even release the movies like Warner Brothers is doing, and they say, oh, it's a write-off. And it's like, you mean 400 people worked for half a year or 2 years for nothing? It
Right. It's
means
like, what the
nothing.
hell? What was the point of doing it if
Thankfully,
you're not going to keep it in there?
well, that's like Trick or Treat. When I worked on Trick or Treat, it was supposed to be a theatrical release. And then they got shy because I think Saw was a sequel to Saw was opening the same weekend. And then there was another rumor that it was because there were too many women leads and nobody wants to see that. And then there was a
Oh,
rumor
that's
about
bullshit.
the kids in the school bus scene. It was too graphic and nobody wants to see that. And I think it came down to that they didn't want to release two horror movies the same weekend and break the and break the box office in half. I think they knew that a Saw sequel was opening, and I think it was something as simple as that. Or they just didn't have enough faith. Who knows why these? All it takes sometimes is the decision of one person to rubber stamp something, yes or no, and there is no rhyme or reason. And you end up waiting 2 years and hope that it comes out on DVD. And thankfully, with the festival that it went to, it got enough of a word of mouth that people were like, "We got to see this." I mean, the fact that they released it into theaters last year just
Yep.
shows you. Just like with 13 Goes, both of these films have taken a life of their own and have just gotten bigger and bigger the more people see it.
I mean, Trick or Treat is, I mean, Little Sam is one of the most widely bought collectible items, cult following. In my opinion, one of the best anthologies since Creep Show and some of the ones before that, Tales from the Dark Side, and they all feed into each other. So let's tell everybody a little bit about your character in Trick or Treat.
I play Anna Paquin's blind date, that she doesn't know that her sister is going to find someone for her, and we think at the beginning of the movie that it's just a blind date. It's just a romantic thing. They're going to a party in the woods and they're setting up blind dates for everybody. But turns out they have other plans. But the best part of it was when she says to her sister, "Is he young?" And they cut to me dressed up as a big giant baby, and it's like, "Yeah." It's like you can't get any younger. And I when I saw the breakdown for that character, I said I got to get this because it's such a beautiful homage to my character from 13 Ghosts.
Yep.
It's like a perfectly designed Easter egg for anyone who knows their horror films. To know that the guy who played the big baby in this film is the same guy playing the big baby in this film. Both Warner Brother releases, and the funny part is I lost over 200 pounds by the time we shot Trick or Treat. So I look like the great child's baby. I
I'm half the man I used to be.
and this time I got the addition of the bonnet, and I got the booties
Which I
this
thought was
time.
perfect. I thought it was
This time
perfect.
I actually have a diaper, whereas in 13 Ghosts I just had a pair of white jockeys
Yeah,
that
yeah.
were stained brown. Uh, but I like to know
Can't be
my
messy.
biggest part my biggest trivia is knowing that under those I'm wearing a gold lame thong, but nobody knows that. Only I know that. Well, now you know that.
Now that picture has been ingrained into the
So
Black
the
Flame
the great
universe.
child was very fabulous as he was walking around with his gold lame thong on. So when the
And
guy I have
go
to
ahead.
say, I have to let the fans know I've seen at least two people who have framed copies of my underwear from 13 Ghosts, which is a bizarre thing to say. But I have to let them both know that neither of those underwear touched my ass crack because I had gold lame thong on underneath. So I'm sorry if you were hoping to get some DNA out of it, but
It's like fucking Tom Jones, you know. Uh, did I get the man silk boxers?
It's funny. I was watching. There's a thing on Netflix about crazy people with their crazy collections in their homes and stuff. And there's one guy that has a whole horror theme in the basement, and that's where I saw my underwear hanging there, framed with the little rattle that they show in the movie that I never actually used. But in the Ghost Files on the DVD where they tell the backstories, because now
Yep.
everyone is thinking about for the last 10 years, the word has been on the street. Everybody wants to see a series based on the backstories of these ghosts.
Oh,
And
how cool
you
would
know,
that be, though?
on the DVD, they had those extras where they told the ghost stories of all the different ghosts, and everybody saw that and was like, why didn't they put more of that into the movie? And I think they should have
Screen
put
time.
they should have put some backstory to the ghosts. I think that would have been the only thing that would have improved the movie, was to show a little of the backstory of each ghost. They did a little bit of it with the Juggernaut at the beginning,
Yeah,
but it would have been nice to see, especially considering they made that whole feature for the DVD extras. They could have just taken stuff from there. I mean, the truth is, there's got to be at least 5 minutes too many shots of hallways in the film as it is. We could have replaced that with some
that's so true.
backstories. It's like, oh, we need an extra 5 minutes. We'll show this hallway. Look, it's empty.
Dramatic
Now we're,
effect.
ooh, another hallway. But I was saying to someone else a while ago, I think one reason why the movie has gotten more and more popular is, and this sounds silly, but as the screens people are watching it on have gotten smaller, it has become
Hmm.
more successful because it has such fast-paced editing and
Right.
it's so quickly cut together. When you saw it that opening weekend on a big, massive screen, it was like your brain was overwhelmed. It couldn't handle it. It was like, I'm looking at this side of the screen and I've already missed what's happening on this side. And so not until it came out on DVD and people got to see it on their TVs,
Hmm.
all of a sudden it was like you could see all the action. You could see the cuts on the screen as they were happening. Because I remember at the premiere, that was the complaint amongst a lot of us, was that the screen was too big for how fast it was, like almost like it was cut like an MTV music video with the loss of
Yeah,
the fast cutting.
I could definitely see that. Yeah.
And so as now that people are watching it on their TVs, it's like it must be amazing because you can see all of it happening. I think it's one of those things that it's just behind the scenes. You're not even realizing that it's just like your brain is watching a different film the smaller the screen gets.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's my theory. Nobody needs to agree with it. I like it.
Absolutely. And after doing this film, how did it impact your life?
Well, like I was saying to you earlier before we went on, seeing your face tattooed on people, that's one thing that has, of all the characters I've played, there's none that anyone has really wanted to put on their face, and why would, on their body, and why would you? But for some reason, I think it's because it's all the ghosts. Like most people, most of the tattoos I've seen, they've been like sleeves on an arm or sleeves on
Mm,
a leg, and they have all of the 13 ghosts or the 12 ghosts wrapped around their leg. And I'm just one of. But what for me, that's the most trippy of that is that, you know, I don't have any make. Everybody was wearing makeup in the film. Everybody's wearing all these crazy outfits. I I got two little prosthetic pieces that go over my eyebrow, and that's it. It's just me. So when you see your face, just your face on some stranger's thigh, it's a little, it plays with your head. Yeah. And I'm sorry about the mess there, but the baby had a bit of a sick tummy. And the great part of that puke was it wasn't puke, it was like latex and it had chunks in it. So once it was placed, it never moved, it never shifted, it never melted, it never did. Versus Trick or Treat, where the I was supposed to be drinking and got sick from drinking too much alcohol, and I puked up all over myself. So the puke that they put on me in 13 in Trick or Treat was made from potato and leek onion soup and beer, well, non-alcoholic beer, because that's what I was drinking in my baby bottle,
uh-huh.
and um, chunks of hot dog because it was supposed to look like I upchucked all my food from the
Yeah.
day, and so
Right.
that's what I had running down me when you see me passed out. So I've got that beautiful smell in my face, and then
Woo!
3 months later, they decided they wanted some extra footage of the giant baby after the wolves had their way with me And so they did a bunch of scenes where you see the giant's baby's neck ripped open, and you see
Yep.
them going to town on me, and that was
Oh, I'm
scary as
sure you
hell
were
because
so mad at that.
yeah, that was scary as hell because you have these big animatronic wolf mouths going on,
Whoa.
closing in on your actual, and it's actual teeth on a motor. It was scary as hell. And
No shit.
another piece of
Okay.
trivia for
I was
people,
curious how they did that. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So no CG. I had a big freaking wolf with razor sharp teeth constantly coming in down on my throat. And another piece of trivia is those are the same wolves from Underworld, which they had just shot
I
in
knew it.
Vancouver. And I think they spray painted them black or they darkened them because I think they were white.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the same ones. It was the same people doing the yeah. So there's a lot of sharing when it's the same company doing the same effects, happens a
Hey,
lot,
why the hell not? At least you
especially
get your
when
money's worth.
you know, uh, and the Jason, the not the Jason, the Sam head. I like they
Mm,
had the animatronic version, and then they also had the Quinn Lord version. It's
hmm.
so weird to see him full grown now because to
Isn't it?
me, Trick or Treat doesn't seem that long ago. It still seems recent to me until I see a picture of a grown man and then someone says that's Quinn. I go, no, oh yeah, wow. You don't see the how much time has lapsed until you see it through a child. And I did a movie with him even before uh no, it was after that. It was called Space Buddies, and he was
Oh
one of the
yeah.
little. It was one of those talking dog movies, uh, the Airbud movies, and
You
he was
just
in
done it
that. And
all,
I was
man.
he was trying to break into NASA to get his dog, and I was the security guard at NASA, telling them they had to come with me. And it's so funny when you're constantly working with the same actors from different projects as different characters, but. No, so it's been good because I get my most fan mail from 13 Ghosts until I did Scooby Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed. And now I get a lot of fan mail for Minor 49er that I played in Scooby Doo 2. And it's crazy because it's two different audiences. I get like a lot of kids from Scooby Doo and I get a lot of their adult parents, but then now that the movies have been out for 20 years, the audiences are just all jumbled together because the people, there I am. Yeah. That was 6 hours of makeup and 2 hours of wardrobe every day for the entire, I was on that on and off for 7 months playing Minor 49er. So, and if, that was the first project I did after losing 200 pounds. And the first thing they told me was they were going to have to build me a fat suit. So, but my wife was right. She said, at least you can take it off each night. And I
Exactly.
didn't have to go home with it. But
No, no.
that was a hard one.
Um,
That was a lot of work on that film. Hey, buddy,
Johnny Logan Harley says, "Hey, buddy." Welcome,
he's a
Johnny.
great artist who's done some great artworks of my couple of my characters. And it's always nice to get fan art. It's always nice to see people doing very appreciating the work that you've done. Like the picture that you have on the screen, uh, Neil Fraser in Scotland. He's a poster designer, and
Oh,
I commissioned him to do that for me. That's a photo I sell at conventions, and it's also uh, my banner for conventions. I got him to do 10 of my most famous characters. And my favorite thing is always getting people trying to see if people can recognize how many of the characters on that photo people can recognize because a lot of people don't recognize me from film to film. They know my characters. They don't necessarily know the person who plays it. Like even on Scooby Doo 2, I wasn't in Scooby Doo 2. Minor 49er was in Scooby Doo 2. When I was working on set, for example, like Freddie Prinze Jr., he wasn't working with Sear and Starth. He never saw Sear and Starth. By the time he saw me, I was minor 49er. By the time I went home, he went home, I was minor 49er. So there's a lot of people that worked on that film who have no idea who I am, to the point that you'd be standing on set and they would just walk over and start poking your belly. And you almost want to go, hello, there's a human in here.
I,
Because it's so
I,
easy to
you
lose
know,
sight, and you just recognize everybody as the characters they're playing. And especially on Scooby Doo, where it's not Matthew Lillard, that's Shaggy. Everybody knows what Shaggy looks like. And
exactly.
so it was nice to be part of that world. So I've been part of the Scooby world twice, because I was also in the third film, the live action film called Scooby Doo: The Mystery Begins, where they went back to high school.
That was like one of my absolute favorite films of that series. It was so much fun to see everybody in high school, and you knew Shaggy was getting high all the time.
Yeah. But to see how Scooby was found, how Scooby came into the picture, how the different guys who were all in different cliques at school. None of them were really friends of each other, but they all became friends. And that was fun because instead of being Minor 49er, one of the villains in the second film, I got to be the possible villain of the episode, because they think I'm the bad guy, but I just turn out to be a happy janitor who likes to dance and wants to be the next dancing star of America. And that was a fun one to do, because that was with Brian Levant, direct dad, who he directed the Jingle All the Way, and he directed the Flintstone movies, and I worked with him on Are We There Yet, the film with Ice Cube.
I was
So
gonna
I had
say,
worked
what
with
the
him on
hell?
that.
You're even in that one.
Yeah, I'm the truck driver when he gets to Canada, and Ice Cube has to flag down someone to chase after the other trucker with the two kids. He flags me down, and that's when I say, hey, and if you notice when you watch that film, that's another thing where I was telling you earlier about, from each script version that comes out, things changed and the concepts of
Yeah.
characters change. Well, on that film, uh, the character name changed so many times. There was young, affable fella. There was truck driver. And then at one point, I was supposed to be driving the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. And my character was hot dogger. And so then they changed it, because I think once Oscar Mayer realized that uh, I was driving crazily through traffic, I don't think they want their Wienermobile associated with reckless driving. So
Oh,
then
for
that
hell! Come
that
on.
licensing didn't go through. But unfortunately, my my beautiful embroidered chair back was already made. So I've got this beautiful chair back that has the Are We There Yet logo, the driver's license, and everything on it. And then when you flip it around, it says hot dogger. It's like most films, it says your name, Sear and Starth, right? So it doesn't matter if they change the character name. I got my nice chair back, but this one just says hot dogger, so I have to constantly say, no, this is really me. This was what my character was named. But the funny was, because they kept changing the character's name, eventually they would just refer to me as Ernst in the script. It's just like they knew I
Right.
was playing the part. They don't know what to call me. So they say, okay, Ernst does this, Ernst does this. And so when I read that, I thought, I like the fact that my character is named Ernst. That's cool.
Right. I mean,
I'm gonna
that's your fucking name.
well, I'm gonna guarantee that my character's name stays Ernst. So when we went to shoot, every sentence, every word, everything that I said, well, come on in. Ernst knows how to drive. Ernst is the best. Ernst will get you there. I just threw in Ernst into every sentence, and there was no way around it.
It's stuck.
So it's like Ernst knows how to get you there. Ernst will get you there. Ernst. So that's why now when you see the credits at the end of the film, it's Sears Arth as Ernst. And it's just so perfect when you can have a strange German name, but you can still get it in there. Only because they
It's
ran out of character
infectious.
names.
Just an absolute inspiration to
And
big guys all over the place. Cause I mean, I'm 6'2", 289, always been big, stocky, the one that they would always pick to, I don't know. I never did any like, formal acting or anything like that in school, nothing like that. But I was always a performer. So when I became a drummer, I mean, I was on
yeah,
stage all the time and then touring for the last 25 years, as a professional drummer in the metal scene. So um,
if
getting
anybody,
into film,
I was just going to say, if anybody has told a fib, if anybody has lied to their parents, if anyone has said that they weren't out drinking or they were at the library or they're at their friends studying, then you've acted. It's like if you need to act, just think back to the last time you told a lie, because the
that
the
is so
the the,
damn true.
the goal of a lie is to make the person believe that it's true. So that's all we're doing. So when people are like, I
Yeah.
couldn't be an actor, you've acted every day of your life. Nobody is the same person all the time. You have the person you are at
No.
work, you have the person you are at conventions, you have the person you are at concerts, you have the person you're at the bank. It's like everybody gets a different version of you. That's the same thing. But the problem I've had is my characters that I've played have had such uh over the top have been such over the top characters, and the wardrobe that I've worn, happens is you forget to take them off sometimes from role to role. And so you end up having all of these characters build on top of you to the
Kind of
point
like in
where
your head. Yeah.
you don't know who you are anymore, because you're like acting through all of these layers of characters that you've played. So whenever I do an audition, wherever I'm on camera doing a self tape, it's like I have the hardest time just being me. It's like parts of different. My wife, when she's doing the reading and I'm doing a self tape for an audition, she'll like, well, that line sounded like this character, and that line. It's like because I end up I have a certain way of saying certain lines or certain things, and it's so hard after a while when you've played so many over the top crazy characters. Like I have friends who they've got over 100 roles on their resume, but 85 of them are playing a cop. So it's like, they're good. They're the guy. They're
They're always in
go-to
that
guys that
mentality.
there's always someone who plays FBI in something. There's always people who play doctors and judges and stuff. And the
Yep.
problem with the business is you get typecast. So if you're good at playing a judge, next thing you know, you've got 50 judges on your resume. And when you're good at playing over the top freaks of nature, you're going to have a lot of those on your resume, and that's what I have. And my biggest challenge has been getting normal guys on my resume. Just happy-go-lucky, the friendly neighbor, the guy. Um, that's why the last film that I did that is on Paramount Plus, Crawl Space, where I
Mm.
starred with Henry Thomas, our Elliot from
E.T.
E.T.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there was nothing about the character that was
Oh, wrong one.
supernatural. I
Oh,
played
sorry.
Sloth in that. I was one of the seven deadly sins, the Magnificent Seven. That was season 3, and
I don't know
I
how I
like
didn't get
Crawl
that
Space
one. My
because
apologies.
yeah, Crawl Space. I was just a big guy. I was just a big guy, but it was nothing to do with the character. The character could have been any size, and I
Mm.
like those kind of roles where it's like, you've been chosen for your acting. You've been chosen because you're an interesting character, not because it's a sight gag where they just want big fat guy fall down, go boom, you know, which is fine. I've got a, but after so many years, you want to be able to
It gets
stretch your
old.
nut a
You want
bit.
to be taken seriously. Yes.
And now you throw enough money at me, I'll put on the diaper again. It's like they keep saying that, are you going to be part of this new series where the backstories of the 13 ghosts? And it's like, you throw enough money at me, I'll put a diaper and bib on again. And I had mentioned with 13 Ghosts, I was going to tell you the story of how my look came to be with my hair, because everyone always makes fun of that blonde tuft of hair I have on my head. And I was at a makeup fitting and a camera test, and I was standing outside. I had a pretty good size afro at the time, so I had lots of hair. And I'm talking with the director, Steve, and we're trying to figure out a look for the giant baby. And just then, Shannon Elizabeth comes out of her trailer and she's walking by, and Steve just decides he's going to poll her,
Mm-hmm.
two L's. Sorry, just made a mess. And he asks her, "What kind of hair do you think the great child should have?" And she says, "Oh, you know what would be funny? You remember there in the I think it was in the 60s or the 70s, there was this cartoon character. He was like a big duck, and he had like a bib, and he had on like a rattle, and he had like a big tuft, big curl in the front." And Steve goes, "Baby Huey?" And she goes, "Yes, Baby Huey. It would be so funny if he had like just a big curl." Next thing you know, I'm getting sent to the makeup trailer. They shave off my afro. All they leave is a big tuft of hair in the front. And sadly, that tuft is not there. I couldn't even do it nowadays if I wanted to. But they shaved everything off. They left a tuft of hair, and then they dyed it bleach blonde. And then every 3 days, I had to go in and get my roots touched up because you could start seeing the dark hair coming through, and we can't
Yep.
have that. Um, and at the beginning of the shoot, I was like wearing baseball caps when I was out in public, and I was so embarrassed because if I took my baseball cap off, I looked like the ass of a poodle, right? So so I was wearing baseball caps and everything. By the end of the 3 months, I'd be out in public. I had little barrettes in my hair and everything. And it was like I was just living it because, I had a story that went along with it. It wasn't my normal look. This was what Shannon Elizabeth made me look.
Thank you, Shannon.
It was a good look. But when we ended up doing reshoots 3 weeks or a month before the film opened, we had to do reshoots, which sadly was on 9/11. The exact morning that happened, we were in the
Mm.
studio doing shoots for 13 Ghosts. So I'm standing there in my underwear and my bib and my puke, doing my scary eyes, and then they'd yell cut, and then we'd run over to the monitor and we'd watch what's happening in New York. And then okay, and then we go back to set. So it was such a surreal day to start
Oh
with.
my
Like,
goodness.
so if you know 13 Ghosts, you'll know at the end of the film, once the house is exploded and blown up, there's a shot where you see the ghosts. We've been freed from the house
Yep.
and we're all wandering into the woods, all
Yep.
happy. And I think the jackal is dancing and we're all going off into the
Yep.
woods. That didn't exist in the film we shot. That was something that we went back to reshoot that scene. So that shot was reshot on 9/11. So for me, 9/11 will always be a bizarre, surreal day because it's like I have this thing that went on in the world, but then I also, and for that, I didn't do my hair again. I shaved my head and they actually put a tuft. So the guy that bought my underwear, in the same frame, he has my tuft of hair next to my underwear.
No
And
shit.
I had to tell him that sadly that's only from one little scene because of a reshoot. That's not what I wore in the whole movie, but it's still film worn, I guess.
I mean, yeah, you had it. They put it on you, so
It's
it's
just bizarre when you
amazing.
see. I remember walking down the street one day. My stepdaughter was in town. We were out doing the tourist thing, and we're walking past the store downtown, and they had movie memorabilia and stuff from different famous movies and TV
Yeah.
shows in this big display. And I'm standing on the corner, and I go, "Boy, that thing looks so familiar. What is that?" And I go up and I look at. They had a little Polaroid shot stapled to the outfit, and it was a picture of me from an episode of Outer Limits that I did many moons ago. And that
Right.
was
Yep.
my spaceman outfit that I wore in that. And
You're
yeah,
like,
there's a
ooh, blast
picture
from
of
the past.
when I was at big, like the 600 pounds that I was. I played a character named Silverface, and I basically looked like a big pinball. I look like a big silver ball in the episode because my outfit is shiny silver, my head is shaved and painted silver. I'm called Silverface, and it was with Colin Mockery and Mackenzie Phillips were in the episode. And Colin Mockery and I we had to start the episode off with basically this big improv fest. The director, Michael Roll, was part of Theater Sports, which was a big improv thing that Colin Mockery used to be a part of in Vancouver. So they were friends. They were old improv friends. So he knew how well, everyone knows how well Colin Mockery can do improv from 25 years of Whose Line Is It Anyway? Now
Oh
I'm in
yeah.
a scene with him and I have to improv off of him, and now I'm supposed to be funny. And it's like, oh God, geez, thanks for putting me up against the best improv guy in the world. And he's looking at me, and at one point he calls me the Jolly Green Giant sex toy. uh Another one of his improv insults, he goes, why don't you hang a wreath around your nose because you're brain dead? And the best I could come up with was, when they say a man loves a man, and when they say a woman loves a man in a uniform, they don't mean a rent-a-cop, baldy. And it's like, when in doubt, go after the obvious. He's bald. I'll call him Baldy. Get it?
I mean, it
But it was
worked.
so bizarre seeing my outfit that many years later, just in a movie display on the side of the road. But
That's
yeah,
something.
it's been a career of those kind of crazy characters. And who gets to be on out? So, like I was going to say, I was in two Scooby Doo's. I got to work with Kermit the Frog in a Muppet movie. I was in Muppets Wizard of Oz, so I got to work with Kermit. And who else was in that? Queen Latifah and
Damn.
Ashante, David Allen Greer. So I got to work. Quentin Tarantino's even in that movie. Um,
Right.
eh, he plays himself,
Right. Yeah.
and uh, Kermit is pitching him movie ideas. so,
Could you
so I
imagine?
got to be in that. I got to one of the most famous comics of the last 50 years internationally is Asterix and Obelix. And it's one of the biggest cartoons in the world for 50 years. And they did two big computer generated feature films. And I got to play Obelix, the main guy, in two of those. So I've got all these parts of childhood that I've got to. Oh, and I did an Airbud movie, and then I did a Search for Santa Paws. I did Space Buddies. So I've got all these Disney talking dog movies, and then on the
Damn.
flip side, I've got the ABCs of Death too, where I'm jamming a penis in my mouth. So it's like you'll find me everywhere.
It's just unbelievable the depth of, and I was saying this to myself earlier. I'm like, every actor that I've talked to, not, necessarily on my show, but just because I'm starting to get into film now. My first one is a zombie film. So it's like I can cross that off my bucket list. I've been a zombie and I fucking loved it because, monster characters, serial killers, slashers, like that's my thing. That's what I would like to do. Now, I really want to do demons, obviously. I could do vampires, whatever the fuck, give it to me. I'll pull it off. And it's like everyone's always like, well, I really want to be featured more and blah 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 blah. It's like you have been in so many iconic films, not necessarily, as a main character, and some you have, but for the most part, a lot of them were supporting roles, and it's memorable.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
can
like I
have
don't know
I can
why
have
people don't think it's possible to have a career like that, and you've done it.
Yeah, like I was saying to you earlier,
Woo!
there's famous and then there's horror famous. And I've noticed with the conventions, especially, everybody that has been in, and it can be a no budget horror film that you see on Tubi that no one's ever heard of. The fact of the matter is, in this world, everybody is a fan of a certain film, and they may
Yeah,
be the only person who's a fan of that film, but everybody is famous to somebody in this business. And you may have only been in one film when you were 5 years old, but that film is a huge,
that's
there are
so
people at
goddamn
conventions that
true.
to this day, 30 years later, they've only ever been in one film, but they're doing the convention circuit because they're memorable. They stood out, like the kid in Deliverance, the little kid who's playing the
Oh
banjo.
yeah.
Immediately you know who that is. Nobody knows what his name is or anything, but you know the character. And that's the biggest thing I've had is people, nobody knows who I am name wise, other than people who have done the deep dive. But they know the characters I play. I have people, I'll be walking down the street. I had this happen with a city bus. A bus is driving by. All of a sudden, the bus hits the brakes in the middle of the road. The driver opens the door and yells, "Pancakes!" It's like he recognized Mr. Campisi from Say It Isn't So. And all of a sudden, the bus driver is yelling pancakes out. I don't know what the people on his bus thought was happening at that moment. The bus driver was
Oh, he
losing
probably
his
scared the
mind.
hell out of them. They're all like,
But
what
I get
the
that kind of stuff. I get people chasing me down in airports for 20 minutes, following me through the airport as I go from one terminal to another. And you think somebody is stalking you. You don't know what's going on, and then you find out it's somebody that recognizes you from Dreamcatcher, and they just want to get your autograph, but they're too shy to say anything. But you've noticed them for 25 minutes as they've been following you through the airport. you know,
creeping,
and
grabbing
Dreamcatcher was
people.
a hoot because it's a Stephen King film. It was written and directed by Lawrence Kasdan, Academy Award nominated, winning actor director. I mean, the guy who wrote Empire Strikes Back for him. And then it was written by William Goldman, an Academy Award winning screenwriter. So it was like I got to knock three big names off with one film. You know,
Fucking hell,
and
that's huge.
and I'm the first person you hear in the film. I'm the first 5 minutes of the film, and then they bring me up later on in the film. So it's like I love it when you've left the film. Oh, thank you, John. I love it when uh, you leave a film or you die in a film, and they continue to talk about you later on in the film. That's always a nice little ego stroke. It's like uh, my wife made fun of me. She said. She goes, whenever you die in a film, it's never just a a nothing death. It's like they'll have a memorial moment for you. It's like I did a movie called Monster Island with uh, Adam West. I got to work with Adam West. He played a
Oh
mad
my
scientist called
goodness.
Dr. Harryhausen, and he was called Dr. Harryhausen because the movie had was all stop motion animation, and with
Yeah.
Harryhausen being the king of that, that was like an homage to him having the crazy mad doctor named after him. And I was Carmen Electra's bodyguard, Eight Ball, and uh,
Oh
I got to
man.
have a big. I got to battle a 100-foot
Was
long
she
praying
nice?
mantis and a bulldozer. I got to have a fist fight with the creature from the Black Lagoon, uh, and I got to do all this stuff in that movie. And you know, it's like with each of these films, as crazy and as over the top they are, they just continually find something for me to do. And
Which is
like I
fucking
said, I
amazing.
and on that film, they had to, because everything was stop motion animation, they had to build maquettes of my character. So there's a version of my character that was about that tall, and then there's another one about that tall that they could maneuver me and put me in different scenes, like when the black this this flying ant comes in and steals Carmen Electra off the stage, and then I run out to protect her, and it grabs me too and flies away. So they had to have me kicking and screaming as it's flying away with me. And my wife, when she found out that I was going to be playing Carmen Electra's bodyguard, I was going to be hanging around with her all day. She
Oh,
goes,
she
"You
was
make
probably
sure."
pissed.
She said, "You make sure that they know you're married." And I went to the director and I said, Eight Ball is married. So I had my wedding ring is in the film. And then I went to the special effects guys and I told them, it has to be clear that Eight Ball is always married. So even on my little maquettes that they made, they painted in the little gold ring and everything. I mean, my wife was only kidding, but I took it fully serious, and I made sure
Apparently,
that there was
yeah.
no second guessing the fact that I was married because she was a handful.
I was gonna say, was she nice? I was thinking she was gonna be like, oh,
She was friendly, but we didn't have long conversations. Let's just
oh
say
well,
that. Uh,
sure.
she had her assistant
Entourage.
who was always running around getting her a Diet Coke because she lived on Diet Coke. And, you know, I remember there you go. I remember she came to set with a stack of Stuff magazines because I think she was in Stuff magazine that week. And she kept asking if anybody wanted a signed copy. And then signing the copies of them and giving them to people, which fine, whatever. But it was just it's usually the other way around, people bringing
Yeah,
copies to them.
she's trying to give away copies of a magazine that she was in, although y'all are there to shoot a film. What the
Yes.
hell?
And it was funny. It was like when the movie started, it was going to be um Christina Aguilera was going to be the female lead because it was supposed to be about a rock concert, and this thing was for
That
MTV.
makes sense. Yeah.
Completely wrong audience because this was for the audience of people who are fans of the movies from the 50s and who understood the kind of effects and the humor and everything. And
Yeah.
the MTV crowd was like, "Oh, this movie's stupid. The effects are so fake. You can clearly tell that that's a plastic ant." And it's like, you've completely missed the point. So it was the wrong audience. But the funny part was when we first started, it was going to be Christina Aguilera. Then we got word that it was going to be Little Kim.
Oh man.
Then, so it kept going down. And then by the time we were getting ready to shoot, we found out it was going to be Carmen Electra who's going to be singing and performing at this concert. And the joke on set was, who's next? The person that gets kicked off American Idol? It's like how much.
Right. Who
And then
even
that
knew
that
Carmen could sing?
well, exactly, but she does. But
Not
the
known
funny
for that.
part was, it's funny how my joke about American Idol ended up becoming true because when we ended up doing Scooby Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, there was the whole time we were shooting the film,
Oh yeah, at
there
the end
was
of the film, Ruben
at
stuttered.
the end of the film, there was going to be this big cameo. So while we were shooting the film, there was all this talk about all these different pop stars, and maybe it's going to be Britney, and maybe it's going to be this person, and maybe it's, like
Thank
there was
goodness it
talk.
wasn't Brittany. Just saying.
So there was talk of all these things. And like 2 days before we shot the scene, they had the big finale of American Idol,
Yeah.
and Ruben stuttered one. So
I
then
was
it
so
was
happy
like,
about that too. He was so good.
so all of a sudden it was like, we got to get him. So they got him, and he flew in and he did his cameo in the thing. And then it was like, as we were waiting for the film to come out, it was like, are people even going to know who Ruben Studdard is by the time the film comes out? It's like, because when you're making it, it's all in the news and it's all that anybody's
Sure.
talking about.
It's
So,
huge.
but you're like, that's a dangerous move when you take someone from a game show, basically put them in the movie, and then you know fingers crossed that people knew who Ruben Studdard was by the time the movie came out, which they did, and it was fine. It was such a short little thing at the end. It was a little bizarre. It was like, and ladies and gentlemen, Ruben Studdard. I was like, okay. I mean, good for him. He's in the movie.
I mean, first of all, he's not going to say no
Yeah, well,
because, I
exactly.
mean, hands down, the sequel was very, very successful, super successful. Everybody fucking loved it. Probably
I
more
think it was
so than
better
the
than the
first
first
one.
one. I think it was
Yeah,
better than the first one. I
I
think
do
it was more
too.
of a Scooby Doo episode. It was
It really
more,
felt that way. Yeah.
yeah.
I like the
Whereas the
way,
first one,
Poolsville, uh, got pissed off at them all. They were
Well,
like
and the
public
thing
enemy
with
number one.
Schoolsville, in the museum, all the characters you see in the museum, when we started shooting that film, not when we started shooting it in prep, when we started doing all the makeup and everything, all of those monsters you see in the museum were going to be in the film. They were all realized. They all had realized makeups, all the
Yeah,
different the Chickenstein and the Creeper and Redbeard's ghost and the Witch Doctor and all these famous characters from the Scooby-Doo series. They all the actors were hired, all the makeups were designed. We went through all the makeup fittings, we went through all the different camera tests, and with each camera test, they would ixnay a bunch of ghosts, and then we go to another camera test and they'd ixnay a bunch of ghosts for whatever reason. I think it was probably cost because of we were doing
yeah,
everything with practical effects.
sure.
And the thing we eventually kept cutting them down. But the good thing for me was it's like as they would cut different ghosts, if there was gags that those ghosts had that they liked, they would just pass them on to the remaining ghosts. So all of a sudden, Miner 49er breathes fire. Why? Well, because Redbeard's ghost, who breathes fire, all of a sudden he wasn't in the film anymore, but we liked the fire gag. We'll give it to Miner 49er. So now I'm
Why
breathing
not?
fire in the film. And so now I got a scene with Freddie Prinze Jr. as he tries to escape me breathing fire on him. And so see, the thing is with the monsters, if they decide to go CGI, this happened to me with uh, Percy Jackson in the Sea of Monsters. I was cast to play one of the main monsters in that film,
Wow.
called Boar Man. I was half wild boar, half like
Yeah.
warrior, and I went down to LA, down to ADI makeup, and they did the whole makeup design. I went and got contact fittings and everything. Had all this stuff done in LA. Came back up here to Vancouver, and we had the makeup tests and the camera tests. And then I get the phone call that says they're going CGI with all the ghosts. I mean, with all the monsters,
Hmm.
and all the monsters that were created for the film were out. And because you can worry about what the monsters look like after the fact if it's CGI. You know, you
Right.
don't even need to know what monsters you're going to have. You're just going to have your bunch of actors running around screaming at tennis balls and red dots. And then you can figure out later what monsters you're going to put in the film. So you're not marrying yourself to something like when
No.
with 13 Ghosts, all the ghosts were practical makeups. So it was
Which
never not going to be.
that was the best part about it.
Yeah, because uh, as you know, when you watch a movie that's all CGI, there's a disconnect. The actors, there's a blankness in their eyes because they're not reacting to anything. In
Nope.
13 Ghosts, when you see Matthew Lillard reacting to a 6'6" baby with an axe and puke all over him, there's no acting involved. He's seeing that because I'm standing right there. And all
Yep.
of the hammer, with all the spikes in him, and the jackal with the cage on the face and everything. Everything you saw, the actor
Was
saw and had
legit.
to react to.
Yeah.
And it would have been a completely different movie if that had been CGI and all added later. You would have just
Definitely.
had a bunch of people doing empty reactions. But I think there's something about, I always say this, when you're reacting with another human being, it's like their soul is bouncing off your eyes. It's like
Yeah.
there's a there's something happening there that is absent when you see some of these big superhero movies where they're acting against green screen. There's something missing. When someone
Yeah, for
jumps,
sure.
when an actor jumps off a cliff, there's no oh my god, because it's not a real guy. It's a cartoon character jumping off the cliff. But you go back 20 years,
That's
you
so
got
true.
some live actor running and diving off a cliff. You can tell it's a real guy, and it was like, oh
Mhm.
my god, there's tension that's added. When you watch Spider-Man and it's just a cart, it's like it's a movie, but the reality is that you're just watching a cartoon. And then at the end of the last shot, they cut into the guy who plays Spider-Man.
Mhm.
Thank God
So
that I came up in an era of practical effects, because I got to do a lot of that. My even in my character in Once Upon a Time, in the second episode when they had the big dark curse, I played the ogre. I was one of the queen's minions, helping her create the dark curse, and I got to do an amazing makeup on that film as the ogre. And then the next season they were going to have There I Am There. I mean, that's an amazing makeup, and the razor sharp teeth and everything. And you don't get
Just
to see any of that in the episode because it happens so quick. They basically just cut to me. I pull the hair off my head, I put it in her basket, and that's it. And they were going to have the ogre show up in other episodes. And then they decided to have the Ogre Wars. And they said, don't worry, we're going to have the Ogre Wars next season. And then over the summer, I get a call that says, oh, by the way, they've decided to go CGI with the ogre. And now, instead of that amazing makeup, all you saw was a cartoon drawing for the next season. And there's a disconnect. All of a sudden, the actors aren't looking at me, you know.
right.
And so then I got to play the Storybrooke version of the ogre. When I got brought over with the dark curse, I was the maintenance man at the city hall where Regina was the mayor, and I did one episode as that, and they gave me the original name of Burly Man, which I always kills me. It's like the only time I ever see the word burly is in a script or in a character breakdown. Nobody
Right.
uses the word burly except script writers. And the
Definitely.
amount of times that I've auditioned for a burly guy,
I mean, at that point, you might as well just say the fucking big guy.
yeah, or just call me the maintenance man. I'm wearing blue coveralls for the whole
That's
episode,
right. Or the handyman. Now that's cool.
Yeah. And then so then when they wrote out the ogre, I said, well, is that it for me? And I said, I'm going to make sure that's not it for me. So I grew a beard, and all of a sudden they bring me in to play Jorge Garcia's brother, and he's playing the giant from Jack and the Beanstalk,
Yeah.
and they hire me to play his brother because we consider him tiny because he's so short, and we're all monsters. So Abraham Ben Ruby and me, and we're all the guys that are playing the brothers are like way over 6 feet tall. And then Jorge Garcia, we call him tiny. So I got to come back for the second season as a complete. So I'm one of the only actors on Once Upon a Time who's played three separate characters. So it's always little trivial things like.
Oh yeah. So out of all these fascinating characters, multi-genre TV and film, which one is kind of your favorite? Did you more so enjoy being all those monster characters, or did you enjoy just kind of like being yourself and just, playing some simpler characters?
It's funny as I'm looking at this photo on the screen, I'm thinking of it's like I haven't even touched on so many characters that I've played.
So
Like
many.
I see my helmet there. I played one of the Tremor brothers in Smokin' Aces. I was in Smokin' Aces too. I played Baby Boy Tremor, and I
Is it?
think I enjoyed playing
Love
that
that film.
character a lot because my father was played by a great character actor, Michael Parks, who's no
Yep.
longer with us. And he was famous in the 50s and the 60s and a lot of grindhouse films and stuff in the 70s. And then he sort of, was doing the odd TV movie here and there. I mean, he was on Twin Peaks and
Hmm.
uh, playing a French guy. But it wasn't until Quentin Tarantino brought him back in some of his films, and then he was in a bunch of his films, and I was so glad to get to work with him on that because he played my father, and we had such a connect. He was a bit of a drinker in real life, and my dad was a bit of a drinker, and there was a lot of like I I sort of understood his dysfunction, if that makes any
Sure.
sense. And
Yep.
so the father son relationship on set became real to me. And when we were not even when we weren't shooting on set, there was a lot of like he would talk to me in the same way that my dad talked to me. Like it was like It was like a put
Okay.
down, but it was like a loving put down. Like he was, it's like, he's like ribbing me all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And I totally know how to be around someone like that because it really
Sure.
brought back my relationship with my father, which wasn't the best. But it's like you have a lot of fun memories when you have alcohol in your past with a relative. There's a lot of fun memories, but then you got to remember that a lot of those fun memories were based in huge dysfunction. So it's like you have that funny time that I went. My dad took me out for lunch, and we went back to school, and I got to sit on the hood of the car as we drove up into the school. And you think back, and you go, "Wait a minute." I probably shouldn't have been on the hood of the car. Why was I on the hood of the car? Oh, because my dad thought it was funny, and my dad had a few drinks at lunch. And it's like, so you have all these funny stories that you remember from your childhood. And then when you get
Yeah.
older and you look back, you go, wait a minute,
Shit, I
maybe I shouldn't
did
have been on
that.
the hood. So that just reminded me, because the school that I
Yeah.
went to at the time just brought back a memory to something that you said earlier about you being, what did you say, 289? How much did you say your weight was?
Oh, I'm that's me right now. 289, 6'2".
Yeah, so that just I just remembered that just now because the same school, I went to that school, I started in grade six. And when I started in grade six, I was 6'3", 286 pounds. So,
Wow.
so it's just tying everything together. I just remembered you saying how big you were, and it just reminded me that that's how big I was when I went into grade six. So I've always I've always been a monster. And I'll tell you, from the age of 15, no, from the age of 12 to the age of 16, my age and my shoe size were the same. And I'll
Oh
tell
my
you, when I
goodness.
was like 14, 15, 16 years old, I'd have nightmares about being 30 years old and having size 30 shoes because there was no concept in my teenage brain that told me at some point your shoes are going to stop, your feet are going to stop growing. It's like, well,
Right.
from the age of 12 to the age of 16, they didn't change. So I just I would panic and go, oh my God, when I'm 20, I'm going to have size 20 feet. Well, thank God that never happened, but it could have stopped a little sooner. 16 is not an easy shoe to find. You know, in
No,
in
definitely
Canada, I always get, well, you could go down to the States. It's like, should I have to leave my own country?
not. Hell no. Let's not
We
do
used
that.
we used to have the Vancouver Grizzlies. We had an NBA team here, and I couldn't even get shoes.
Ah, damn.
And then our Grizzlies went to Memphis because Memphis is famous for its Grizzlies. So yeah, my favorite character. I love the baby boy Tremor because of who I got to work with and because it was a fun character to basically create. I love when a director gives you enough freedom to just, you know, and because Joe Carnahan, that was his creation, and he didn't direct it, but he was the executive producer on the film.
Hmm.
And we had such a good, he loved my work so much that when he came to shoot the A Team, um, I get a call that says Joe Carnahan is offering you a role in the A Team. He wants you to come out and create this character. So I didn't even audition for the A Team. Joe Carnahan just basically offered me the role because of my work on Smoking Aces too. So for
Mm.
anyone that says, you know, you're not a success, you're not famous, you're not on Entertainment Tonight, you're not on this, you're not on. It's like I have directors writing roles for me. I'm
You
happy.
you
That
know,
to me is a success.
it is, and that's what that's how I kind of approached indie film. Just starting to get into it as far as the horror genre, of course. You don't necessarily have to be a main character to have a long lasting career. I mean, your
Yeah,
body of work speaks for itself. So
yeah.
for
Now
every
so
big guy out there in Black Flame Land that thinks that, oh, I don't have the right build, I'm not buff, I'm not this, bullshit. Fucking
yeah,
go out there. Someone's going to notice your size and say, I
yeah.
need that guy.
just just be prepared to not eat anywhere but Wendy's, because or it's like you might be working a lot, but you'll have a lot of time in between those jobs where it's funny is I joke with my wife all the time. It's like, one day you're having lunch with a bunch of famous movie stars and millionaires, and you're all equals, and you're sitting at the table together, and 2 days later you're collecting empties and taking them to the bottle exchange because you have no money to buy some pizza. It's like, it's the ups and downs of this business, but it's the ups that keep you in it and get you through the downs. It's like my last film was Crawl Space. I shot that in the summer of 21. That's the last thing I worked on. So uh, I'm starting to get a little rusty here, and the strikes,
No way.
didn't help. But now that the one is
True.
worked itself out, and the other one hopefully will work itself out, and even though I'm up in Canada, we're primarily a service industry for the big juggernaut that lives below us, Hollywood. And so, even though we have our own projects up here and we have everything, you know, it's when the big money comes to town that all of a sudden the big shows come in. And the great thing for me is because I haven't had to leave Vancouver. I've worked in the States, and I've worked in different. I shot Capote. I shot that in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I shot some commercials in Denver. I've been to LA, and if so, but I get to base myself out of Vancouver because enough stuff comes to town, and when they want a specific type or a specific person, and a lot of directors like Brian Levant, I've worked with 4 or 5 times. A lot of directors come back and they want to work with me again. Brad Anderson, I've worked with twice. Uh, so it's always nice to make relationships because they're not getting to know you as a Canadian actor or a Vancouver actor. You're just getting to know them as an actor, and they're a director or they're a creator, and you're someone that can help them. I've produced, as I said to you earlier when we were talking, I've produced 3 or 4
Mhm.
features and a bunch of short films, and so I try to keep myself busy when I'm not on camera. I like to create work and some interesting projects, mostly with my producing partner Anthony Harrison. Our newest one is called Exuvia, and we're
Nice.
trying to get we're doing the we tried to send it out to a bunch of festivals, but it's just so hard to get into festivals. It doesn't matter how good your film is. It's like, we've received 5,000
Tricky.
films and we have 22 spots,
Right.
so it's like,
Luck
and
of the draw at that point.
you start realizing that, as a producer, you're doing nothing but throwing money at entry fees. And sometimes it's just like, take a step back and realize that, there's enough avenues out there now. You can put your film on something like Film Hub and get them to put your film on different things like Tubi and whatever, because it, at when it comes right down to it, it's about getting eyeballs for your project. It's not about the money you're going to make or not make. Unless you're a studio, just take money out of the equation. You're doing it because you love to do it. When
Right.
the last film that Anthony and I produced, Exuvia, we were the only crew for like 95% of the movie. He was directing and I was holding the boom mic and doing the sound recording, and we were the only crew. So it was just him and I and a bunch of actors, and we went out and shot a feature film. Why? Because we like making movies and we love the experience of getting up in the
Passion.
morning and going. And you know, the film hasn't gotten released yet, but that was secondary to making the film. And at some point you got to make money because you got to pay to make these films.
That's
Even when
right.
you make them on the cheap, $10,000 is still a lot of money. And
Still 10 grand.
yeah, it's got to come from somewhere, and usually it comes from our savings. From the shows. Like my wife jokes, she calls her wedding ring her Scooby ring because uh, when you're the kind of actor that I am, where you have a career of big parts in small films and small parts in big films. And every so often, a big paycheck comes along. And what ends up happening is all the items in your house start being connected. Like that's our Dudley Do Right entertainment unit, and that's our Scooby Doo ring, and that's our Dreamcatcher couch. And when I worked on
Yeah, because it paid for those
when I
things.
when I was supposed to be on Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters, we had already decided because we were going to shoot Vancouver, and then I had to get a U.S. work permit because then we were going to shoot down in New Orleans at their big amusement park that ended up
Mhm.
going under because of Katrina. So it's just sitting
Right.
there rusting away. So we were going to shoot there. And in retrospect, I'm like, oh my God, I would have been in like 40 pounds of prosthetic makeup in August in New Orleans. Oh,
Would have lost some weight then.
yeah. So that's when having a pay or play contract works out for you because you're like, we're not going to use you, but we still have to pay you. So all of a sudden, the brand new car that we were going to buy turned into a used car that we were going to buy. But now I didn't have to work on the movie.
That's right.
So
Well, man,
it's there's a lot of opportunity for people to get into this business. Get yourself on set, whether it's a big production or a small production. The first place you got to be is you just got to be there. So get yourself some work as extra work. Help out on a friend's film. Do as a grip or whatever, as a production assistant, because then all of a sudden they'll need someone to fill a role, and then you're there, and then the next thing someone else saw you. That's the biggest thing is like when you work on indie film, the guy who's a grip on this film will be directing his own film in a year, and
yep.
the person who was on one position on this, and if you make a connection with them and you remember them and they remember you mostly, then you'll get a call a year later, go, I worked with you on that thing. Do you remember me? Yes, I remember you. And that's why I've always tried my hardest to make human connections with everybody that I work with. I don't believe in this whole hierarchy of, it's like
Oh,
once you reach a different rung, you know, when
most deaf.
when I've worked as
Stay humble.
extra, when I've done extra work, that's where I've noticed this because the way a lot of the crew, like especially like catering and stuff, they'll go, hey, that's the table for the cast and crew. The extras, you're going to get some old donuts and coffee in about 2 hours. You just go back to your tent and you stay away from this, that kind of stuff. I remember on Outer Limits, I was one of the supporting characters in that episode, but because I was dressed up in full makeup, they don't know who I am. And we're shooting a scene at a big alien convention where there's probably about 200 people in costumes, all in different makeups and everything. And I was at the end of my rope. I had been told I couldn't go this way, I couldn't go that way, all for this whole 3 days that we were shooting at this big convention hall. Because I'm in full makeup, they just assumed that I'm one of the extras, one of the background. And
Yep.
the amount of times that I got told I couldn't have something from the catering truck, I couldn't have something from the craft service table, I finally snapped. And I try to be the nicest guy, but sometimes I just reach the end of it. And the production assistant, I felt bad afterwards, but he said, "You can't have that. That's only for cast and crew. Extras go over there." And I said, "Oh, well then I got a pretty big fucking trailer for an extra." And then afterwards, I felt bad for snapping on the guy. He's just doing his job. He doesn't know. But
For
you know,
sure.
when you're playing these characters where you're in full makeup, you try your hardest to keep some level of human dignity because after a while, like I said, they just see the character. They don't see the actor under the makeup. So you're
Right.
constantly trying to try to bring some human dignity to this thing. It's like, could you at least treat me like the actor that's in here and not like the
Right.
character? It's like if you're hanging around on set dressed as you are right now, for example, after a few minutes, you forget what you look like. You know,
Yeah.
you're just you. and you forget and so when I'm wearing all this makeup, like on one of these monsters or something, like I remember in Fangoria, Matthew Lillard said he couldn't go to the lunch tent at lunch because he would get sick when he'd look over and there's Minor 49er with all the puke running down his face, because that doesn't magically come off when I go to eat lunch. So I'm
Right.
just sitting there eating my peas and my potatoes with my puke all over my face. There's nothing I can do about it, but I don't think about it because I've forgotten what I looked like hours ago. So
Right.
I'm just an actor in the. It's everyone else who's looking at having to look at me. So it's like constantly reminding. It's like every so often you just have to walk by a mirror to remind yourself of what you look like. I lose sight. It's like, oh, wait a second, I'm in my underwear. It's like I might be uncomfortable to people. Maybe I should put a robe on. It's like,
Right.
you know, I mean, I don't see my wife makes fun of me. She always says, "You're so afraid to walk past an open window if you're in your underwear or something because you're afraid someone might see you." She says, "People have seen you 40 feet high in your underwear. It's like, what are you afraid of?" And I always say, "No, that's the great child. The guy
Yeah.
walking past his window at home, that's Ernst Harth. I don't need people outside knowing what I look like inside my apartment. It's not the same thing. That's a
No.
character, that's a costume. This is real life." Whereas my wife just sees me in my underwear. She doesn't see the difference. But it's been a fun ride, and like I said, it's been a couple of years since I've worked, but that's just because of between the pandemic, and then just as the pandemic ends, well, it's starting up again. So there's really we haven't gotten to the end yet. We've just moved on. That's what we've done. Um,
You'll bounce
uh,
back.
yeah. So there's just been a huge downtime. So I'm just waiting for. I've got one film in the can that I did, American Dreamer, where I got to work with Peter Dinklage. I took that because it's more or less a sight gag. My size compared to his size. We're both in the same scene together. But I took that. I knew it would be a small little cameo, but I knew it would be fun, and I wanted to work with Peter Dinklage. I think he's a great actor, and that was during the worst of the pandemic when we shot that too. So that was like, getting rammed up the nose every
Sure.
twice a day and getting all the testing done. But I'm just glad that we were able to continue working and making entertainment for people. It was just a lot of sticks up my brain, I'll tell you.
Well, I got to say thank you for joining us tonight.
You're
It has
welcome.
been just a wealth of information. A lot of people that tune into Reapers Underground, they are, indie actors, a lot of them, and just a wealth of knowledge, just an inspiration. It has been an amazing time talking with you
Thank you.
tonight. We've loved every character you have ever played. And for those that, didn't know you before, they do now. And I guarantee they're going to go back, especially, 13 Ghosts, any horror fan that is on their list of at least top five. It's
And I just
definitely
want to
in mine.
say, before I go that um, a lot of conventions, that I haven't been able to go to, and a lot of conventions that people wanted to see me at. So what I've been doing lately is I've been selling my convention prints
Yes.
online. So if people want to go to see Ernst Harth on Facebook, I have it pinned to the top of my page, and my characters from all these films that we've been talking about, I have 8x10s, and most of the pictures that you've been showing are my convention prints, and it's $30. Shipping's included. I'll sign it for you however you want. I can personalize it. I can put some character quotes, whatever you want on it, and send it out to you. And then you don't have to wait in line to see me at a convention. You can get personal, one-on-one, and drop me a line and tell me what you're interested in, and we'll get it out to you. And thanks for having me. Losing my voice here.
Oh,
My bottle of water's gone.
you've given us so many memorable, standout characters, no matter how crazy or how simple. Every last one of them just amazing. You're an amazing talent, and I really
Thank you.
appreciate you coming on the show tonight. And to everyone out there in Black Flame Land, go watch his movies. 9 times out of 10, you've seen them all, but didn't realize that was him. So, to all of us that are getting into the business and wanting to play characters like this, we appreciate all your work, your dedication, your passion. As far as I'm concerned, no award is that necessary to say that you have had a phenomenal career. And to everyone out there, you can too. You just got to get out there in the dirt and be yourself. So everybody out there in the comment section, you guys have been absolutely phenomenal. Oh my goodness, I'm losing. I can't even speak now. Words are hard.
I just did my 13 ghost. I just did my 13 ghost audition for you.
Yep, you sure did. And damn it, I remember that. So as everybody out there is closing their night out with visions of Ernst Harth's eyeballs just now, the great child, dancing in your head, the most important thing that you must remember is to stay heavy.